were to look back 3 to 5 years from now and say that this coaching conversation with me today changed everything for you about your prep, this was the moment, what would need to happen for you?
That's a big ask on you. I would say I just need some motivation, probably because I've been stuck, and some skills that I feel like can really make a difference.
So what do you feel is holding you back right now in terms of motivation? Where do you feel stuck?
I've just been stuck at my score for a couple weeks. I've been getting the same 157 for like 30 practice tests. So that makes me frustrated that even though I'm studying a couple out, like, I don't know, maybe 10 hours a week, it's not pushing me enough. And it's probably the way that I'm studying. I'm just not using my time wisely, but just being stuck at that same score has been frustrating.
Yeah, I'm sure. And score plateaus are really common. What exactly are you doing during your study time?
Yeah, mostly I've been using Khan Academy to go through their questions and drills because it's been free. But I bought the Power Score Logic Games Bible a couple weeks ago, and I've been going through that. And then last night I got the logical reasoning one. So I'm starting with that one. I hadn't done this one yet, but I really like logic games that they did. So I'm hoping that this has the same effect.
Good. And so you started using those fairly recently, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it can take time to find the best materials that work for you personally. And a lot of people are using Khan just because it's free. And, it could be a good starting point. It has some practice tests available for free as well. But you got to decide, how much is the LSAT worth to you? Is it worth only using free materials, or is it worth investing a little bit in the best materials possible if it could get you the score you need in the end?
Yeah, I think Khan Academy got me to the point of like basic understanding, and that's why I'm stuck at this score. So to push past that, I need to invest a little bit more and get more specific. And there's a reason people ask you to pay for things, is because they put a lot of work into it. So I get it. So it's worth investing in a little bit.
Sure. Now, so you told me a little bit about the materials that you've been using, but what exactly are you doing during your study time with those materials? And I assume you also have some LSAT exams, right? You have some practice tests?
Yeah, so Khan Academy has 10 of them, and then I bought a set of prep tests, 72 to 81, just because it didn't overlap too much with the ones that they had free online. So I've been doing one test every weekend. Like on Saturdays, I've been taking a practice test. And then in the mornings when I study, I pick a topic for the week. So this week I've been doing games, and just doing a couple games and then going through and analyzing why I got them wrong and trying to review them.
Good. So what does your review process look like?
Probably not as thorough as it should be. I only review the ones that I get wrong, and I know that it could be helpful to review the ones that I get right too. And I think what's been difficult for me is Khan Academy tells you exactly under each question choice why it was wrong. And part of the process of learning is I need to figure that out myself. But since it's right in front of me, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's why that one was wrong. It's not as thorough as it should be. I know that.
Yeah, it sounds like you know exactly what you could be doing differently already.
Yeah.
As a crutch, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to, let's say you put Khan Academy aside, or you just focus on the exams themselves and your practice tests as well, what could you do after going through an exam to review it?
So after going through an exam to review it, I should really, I've listened to enough of your podcast to know, but I should really go through every answer choice and figure out why it's right or why it's wrong. Not just the one that I've picked. And, I should go through every single one.
Yeah, and that takes time. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And so maybe 10 hours a week, could you bump that up a little bit?
I could, yeah. I can get some hours in after work as well, since I've only been doing before. So I can do some hours after work.
Nice. And when are you taking the exam?
October. I signed up for September, but it's not a good idea just because I have a huge event the day before that I didn't think about when I signed up for it. And I'm not going to be at my best for that test. So October is the other one that I signed up for. And I think November might have to be added on there too as a third test.
Good. So you could push September, postpone that one to be November instead, give yourself a bit more time.
The date to change it was this week and I missed it, but I can add on a third one. I think I'd still have to take September because I can't change it. But yeah,
Something really weird happened with LSAC recently. They've been screwing around with a lot of things, and so I know that they pushed the postponement deadline earlier, along with moving the July score release earlier as well, which they really should not have done. And so I do think it's worth reaching out to them, give them a call or email them, and if you don't like your answer, call them again. Maybe they'll give you a different answer the second time. And it's worth seeing if they'll be a little bit flexible on that, because they snuck in that change and it really wasn't the right thing of them to do.
Okay, I'll give them a call and maybe they'll be really nice about it.
Maybe. You never know. It never hurts to ask. Regardless, I would go for November instead if you're considering multiple.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
So we talked a little bit about putting in more time and the review process. But when it comes to reviewing specifically, you can't review every single problem you ever complete, of course. That would just take far too long if you're reviewing in depth. But I want you to add on to your review not only the ones that you're getting wrong, but also the ones where you had difficulty or were lacking in confidence, or you were down to 2, but you guessed and got lucky, because it could have just as easily gone the other way the next time around.
Yeah, and I think I'll have to mark up my test more so that I can mark which ones I'm getting wrong. Obviously, when you do it online, you can't mark questions to review afterwards, but I'll have to keep track of them, which I think I haven't really been doing. Just as I go through my wrong answers, I'll look at it and say like, oh yeah, that was one that I struggled with. So I should mark them.
You could use your scratch paper, or you could use a bubble sheet, even though they're now obsolete in a way. You could still have one to the side just to notate which ones you want to come back to. And you could also rank your confidence level on a scale of 1 to 10 as you're working through them, but you can't choose 7 because 7 is the cop-out answer. You have to, are you confident or are you not, somewhere outside of that.
Okay.
And then with your review, for the particularly noteworthy ones, don't keep it inside your head. Actually write it out or talk it out with a friend or a study partner or a coach or a tutor or a study group of some kind, just to get it out of your head, because in your head, it's too easy to look at the correct answer and say, oh, I get it now, and then move on. But if you actually articulate what confused you, the method of reasoning, the question stem, or the choices, you'll be well on your way to better understanding the tricks that you fall for so that you won't make them again.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's always harder to explain things out loud.
Yeah, it is, but it really forces you to figure it out. And talking things out actually can help you improve your understanding too, because it takes half-formed thoughts and makes them more fully formed.
Yeah, makes sense.
So what else would be useful for you right now?
What else would be useful for me right now? What would you say about reading comprehension and improvement? Would you say that that's also more just getting more practice in? Because I do feel like I've been putting that one off more because it was one of my stronger sections. Would you say that it's more strategy and practice? Would you say that there's like specific skills that you need? Like how would you best improve on that section?
So there's a lot to say in just 5 minutes, but I'll give you a few quick things that you can implement. One of them is get faster at reading, specifically get faster at reading on a screen. This is new for the digital LSAT, of course. We're used to reading relatively low quality things on the computer and higher quality things in printed books. And the LSAT text, I mean, I don't think it's the best writing style, but the dense nature of the text makes it high quality in a certain sense. So there are 2 tools you can use to improve your reading speed with text on the screen. One is called phrasereader.com. The other is called spreeder.com, Spreeder. And what these tools do is they allow you to copy paste text into a field and display it to yourself at different speeds. And so you can copy in articles from The Economist or Scientific American, but if you have the PDFs, you're able to copy paste LSAT passages. You could also put those in and gradually increase your reading speed from, let's say, 200 words per minute up to maybe 400 words per minute, 25 words per minute at a time, and then test your comprehension with those. Another thing you could do is you could focus more on reading for the structure of the arguments they're making in the passages rather than the details themselves, because they're never really testing you on the details. They're much more testing you about the text, similarly to how in logical reasoning, they're testing you for what's the method of reasoning, what's the role that this statement plays in the argument. You have analogous questions in reading comp. So reading comp is just like a bigger logical reasoning stimulus. And so just like there's evidence, conclusion, and logical reasoning, there are similar things going on in reading comp. So it's not about the information itself or the topic itself. Rather, it's how the author goes about making their argument.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I think I also make an issue out of using LSAT's definitions of things versus real life definitions of things when I'm studying. Even something as stupid as the conclusion of a reading comp passage. I feel like in school, when we were learning about conclusions, it was more of a summary. So I'll pick the answer that looks more like a summary rather than the actual definition they use of a conclusion, which is totally not the same thing.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. A conclusion has multiple definitions.
Yeah. So I need to keep an eye on that too.
And try to think about it more as the author's opinion or the author's viewpoint. And if you want to identify it, think about if they could only say one statement and you had to remove everything else, what would they want to say? And the same is true of logical reasoning as well. If you have an evidence statement, a conclusion statement, the conclusion is the one that you would keep. That's their main point.
Okay. In terms of like structuring studying, would you say that it's better to keep mixing things up? I mean, it might be just personal based on the person, but would you say it's better to keep things switched up throughout the week and do one section one day and then focus on a different one the other? Would you tackle one section at a time?
Somewhere in between. I would say you could have a focus for the week, but still mix in a little bit of the other sections as well so you don't get rusty.
Okay.
So you could do maybe 50% games and then 25% on reasoning and reading comp.
Okay. Taking notes on the side.
Of course. I want to ask you before we sign off, what's the biggest insight you got from our session today?
What is the biggest insight I got from our session today? I know that I knew this already, but I need to review better. I need to be more thorough with my review time and spend more time reviewing than I do actually taking the test. So I think that's a big insight, which I've heard over and over, but I feel like you telling me personally was more like you really need to get on that. So that's definitely something that I need to implement immediately.
Awesome. So go out and make it happen.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It was a little boost of motivation for me.
Awesome. So say keep at it.